Chapter 3, Crossing Paths. Simon couldn't stop thinking about his brief encounter with Grace. There was something about her that was undeniably captivating, an air of authority mixed with an underlying warmth that hinted at depths he was eager to explore. The more he thought about her, the more he realized that Grace Thompson was unlike anyone he had ever met. It was late afternoon, and Simon was deep into his work, analyzing market trends for an upcoming campaign. He had been in the office for just over a week, and already he could feel himself settling into the rhythm of the place. The environment was fast-paced, demanding, and exactly the kind of challenge he thrived on. As he leaned back in his chair, stretching his arms, he noticed Grace walking across the office floor, her usual purposeful stride accompanied by an air of confidence that turned heads as she passed. She was in a conversation with a colleague, her expression serious but engaged. Simon watched her for a moment, appreciating the effortless way she commanded attention without saying a word. Just then, Grace caught his eye. Their gazes locked for a brief moment, and Simon felt a spark of something unspoken pass between them. Grace's expression softened ever so slightly before she returned to her conversation, but the moment lingered in Simon's mind. Deciding to act on impulse, Simon gathered the documents he'd been working on and made his way to Grace's office. He knocked lightly, and when she called for him to enter, he stepped inside, determined to make the most of the opportunity. Grace looked up from her desk, a hint of surprise in her eyes. "Simon, I wasn't expecting you. What brings you here?" Simon smiled, his confidence unwavering. "I wanted to discuss the campaign I'm working on. I've come across some data that might interest you, and I thought it would be better to present it in person." Grace gestured to the chair opposite her desk. "By all means, have a seat. Let's take a look." As Simon sat down, he handed her the documents. Grace's eyes quickly scanned the data, her expression thoughtful. Simon watched her closely, intrigued by the way she analyzed information with such precision. "This is interesting," Grace said after a moment, her voice laced with curiosity. "You've identified some key trends that we hadn't fully explored. I appreciate the initiative, Simon. It shows you're thinking critically about the project." Simon felt a surge of pride at her words. "I believe these trends could give us a competitive edge if we act on them quickly. I have a few ideas on how we can incorporate them into our strategy." Grace leaned back in her chair, studying him with an appraising look. "I'd like to hear those ideas. You've clearly put a lot of thought into this." Simon took a breath, eager to share his thoughts. "I think we should consider a more targeted approach, focusing on specific demographics that align with these trends. It would require some adjustments to our current plan, but the potential payoff could be significant." Grace listened intently, her gaze never leaving his. As Simon spoke, he could see her mind working, considering his suggestions and weighing the possibilities. When he finished, there was a moment of silence as Grace continued to evaluate his proposal. Finally, she nodded, a slight smile tugging at the corners of her lips. "You make a compelling case, Simon. I like the way you've connected the dots. Let's move forward with this approach and see where it takes us." Simon couldn't help but smile in return. "I'll get started on the revisions right away." Grace's smile widened slightly. "Good. And Simon, don't hesitate to bring ideas like this to me in the future. I appreciate the initiative." As Simon stood to leave, he felt a renewed sense of purpose. He had impressed Grace, and that meant more to him than he cared to admit. But beyond the professional satisfaction, there was something else, a connection that he hadn't expected but was beginning to crave. Just as he reached the door, Grace's voice stopped him. "Simon." He turned to face her, curious. "Yes?" Grace hesitated for a brief moment, as if weighing her words. "You've done well so far. I see a lot of potential in you. Keep pushing yourself, you're capable of great things here." Simon felt a warmth spread through him at her words. "Thank you, Ms. Thompson. That means a lot coming from you." As he left her office, Simon couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. There was something between them, something subtle, unspoken, but undeniably real. He didn't know where it would lead, but he was certain of one thing: he was determined to find out. Back in her office, Grace watched Simon's retreating figure through the glass door. She felt a sense of satisfaction at how the meeting had gone, but there was also a flicker of something else, something that she wasn't quite ready to name. Simon Hayes was proving to be a valuable addition to the team, but there was a growing part of her that saw him as more than just a colleague. She had been careful to maintain her professional boundaries, but she couldn't deny the way her thoughts kept drifting back to him. As the afternoon sun cast a warm glow over her office, Grace allowed herself a rare moment of introspection. She had built her career on focus, discipline, and an unwavering commitment to success. But Simon had stirred something in her, a curiosity, an attraction, that she hadn't felt in years. With a deep breath, Grace pushed the thoughts aside and returned to her work. There was no room for distractions, no matter how intriguing they might be. Yet, even as she tried to focus on the tasks at hand, she knew that the connection between her and Simon was something she couldn't ignore forever. Click follow for the next chapters.